Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. You can see that I have a bunch of things out on my counter workspace today because I am going to be making my own homemade marinades from scratch and doing meal prep for the next 4 months. This process usually takes me about 4 to 5 hours on a weekend, and again, it lasts me for several months, so I find the time and investment worth it. So today we are going to talk about the basic formula for making marinades and how I meal prep that lasts me for so long, saves me time, saves me lots of money, and I can always say with truth and authenticity, I have food at home. And the food that I have at home is usually healthy, flavorful, and I never have the same meal twice. So the first thing that I do is peel my carrots and chop them so that I can get them in a container along with my onions. I put some in the fridge and then I freeze the rest. This is really helpful when it comes to the daily making of dinner. I can just pull out the pre-cut veggies, throw them in a skillet and saute, and they are ready to go. Or I can throw them in a pot with my protein and put them in the oven. So it's just a step that I get to leave out during the work week. It's fast, it's easy during the work week, and again, this only takes me 4 to 5 hours on one day, on one weekend, and it will last me a very long time. After shredding my carrots, I do keep the peels because I did wash them first, and I use them when making my homemade chicken feet broth. I do have a video about making chicken feet broth that is really high in collagen, so good for you and great for your skin. So if you're interested in that, that video is in my playlist. I usually buy a bag of carrots at Costco, and this process keeps my meals colorful. I like that they add a little bit of sweetness to my veggie mix for the day. If you're not already doing this, I highly recommend buying your vegetables, cutting them, putting them in bags, putting some in the fridge, some in the freezer, and you will notice that it's very easy to eat them during the work week. Very similar to my carrots, I also chop my onions. I have started fermenting my onions. I also pickle my onions, and then I will slice onions and keep them ready to go. I eat onions in almost every meal. I love the taste, I love the flavor. So if you love onions as well, it's a great way to keep them added to your diet by just having them pre-chopped and then throwing them in. I also use them when I'm making omelets in the morning. So onions in my home get used on a regular basis, and they're probably my most used veggie. So as I'm chopping my onions and just getting that task out of the way, which saves me time when I'm cooking, let's talk about the basic formula for marinades, because you will see me do this over and over and over in the rest of the video. But once you know the basic formula, you can play around with the different combinations. The different combinations lead to different flavors and tastes. So while you may be eating chicken 2 days in a row, the chicken tastes very differently. It has a completely different vibe. You will feel like you're eating a completely different meal. So let's talk about that now. So the basic formula for any homemade marinade is some type of oil. We'll talk about that in a moment. You will need your aromatics, like your herbs and your seasonings. You'll need an acid and some type of sweetener. So that's the basic formula. Now we'll talk about other things that I add. You're about to see me chop up some cilantro and make like a little bit of a pesto that I'm going to throw into some of my marinades. That really helps to diversify the taste. I pull out freezer bags, I line them up, I put my proteins in the bags, and then I start working through that formula, and every single meal is different. So when I tell you I create enough meals for 3 or 4 months, that is true, but none of them are the exact same. And that's what helps me not go out and get fast food, but I know I have a new meal at home waiting for me that I'm excited to try. So it's a cost savings thing. I usually average as a single person about $150 to $200 a month, and I eat all homemade meals from scratch at home. So this is a great cost-saving thing if you're looking to save money with groceries but still eat well. So this video is about 9 months old at the time that I'm doing the voiceover, and I was still needing inspiration from recipes. So you saw me hold up a couple of recipes that I had printed out, and I use those as inspiration. Very rarely do I ever follow a recipe to the T, but you see me here just cutting my proteins, and that helps me with portion control. It really helps the marinade sink into all of the meat. But also, one big giant chunk of chicken in a bag is not something I enjoy. So I like cutting them because it allows me to make 2 meals out of one big piece of chicken in this case. And it also allows the marinade to really soak in and just add so much flavor to the chicken. This is the first of a 3-part series that I'm doing. I did all of this in one day, but I wanted to break it up into how I did the protein. So my first protein is chicken, and then I guess my part 2 will be my seafood, and then my part 3 will be my actual meat, like my beef or my lamb. Buying these in bulk up front does feel like a little scary at first because of the sticker shock, but as I've shared with you in my other videos, buying in bulk saves you so much money over time. Plus, you saw me divide the big pieces of chicken in half. So at this point, I'm going to show you how I start making the marinades. Okay, so as you can see, I'm filling up my jar with olive oil, and now I'm going to start building my marinade. So I start with 1 part oil, add my chicken, add my lemon juice as my acid, and then my honey as my sweetener. And then I've decided to add some of the cilantro pesto that I made. I'm throwing in a little bit of garlic here. And then I put in some salt and pepper. Kind of mixing that all together. Nothing fancy here. I didn't put in a lot of fancy seasonings here just because this is going to be a simple basic chicken recipe, and I will eat my veggies on the side. Okay, so let's move on from my cilantro inspired chicken to now making my sweet chili chicken. All right, so remember, the formula stays the same, but the combination of seasonings and herbs will change. So you see me adding here like crushed red pepper, chili flakes. I think you see me add a splash of soy sauce. You really can't do it wrong, and measurements don't matter that much. You just want to make sure you're not putting in too much or too little seasoning for the amount of protein that you're putting in the bag. But other than that, have fun with trying different combinations. Look at how good that looks. And by the way, even though I ate this a long time ago, I kept a log. All of these meals were excellent. All right, let's move on to the next one. Do you see how quickly this can go once you have everything out and in front of you? See, I start with my oils, and now I'm adding my seasonings. Here I put in a little smoked paprika in addition to everything else. Let's talk about the different oils and sweeteners and acids that I use as you watch me put in different things into each bag. Okay, so we previously talked about the oils that I use: olive oil, avocado oil, or a combination of both. Again, I will be transitioning into tallow, but for now, I use these seed oils, and they work for me. I enjoy them. In addition to oil, you are going to need some type of acid. So let's talk about the options of acids that you can use. I typically use lemon juice, lime juice, or my own homemade vinegars. But you also have the option of using like a white distilled vinegar or an apple cider vinegar. You don't need a lot. I would say a splash, but if you're making a meal for an entire family and you have a lot of meat in the bag, then you might want to add some more. It's just enough for you to be able to cut some of the sweetness and it really adds a depth of flavor to your meals. So even when you're cooking, even if you're not preparing these ahead of time, you should be cooking with some type of acid, but you have options. So use what you have at home. In the past, I used fresh lemon and lime, and then I wised up and started getting the bottled one. Fresh tastes better, but it was just a lot of manual work of squeezing all of that lemon and lime juice into each bag. So because I do so much at once, I did start buying it. But if you have the time and you have the energy, and even if you have a helpful hand to help you, then I would suggest using fresh. But for me, using bottled lemon and lime juice works, or I use my own homemade fruit vinegars. I do have a video of me making my homemade fruit vinegars, which I use in a myriad of things, but I use them so quickly when I use them for marinades that I slowed down and just started using the lemon and lime juice to make my life a little bit easier and to save my what I call very valued homemade fruit vinegars for other things. But I do sometimes use my homemade vinegars in my marinades. If you stick around for part 3, you will see me use apple cider vinegar a little bit more on my heavier foods like my meats. However, for my chicken recipes, I do prefer lemon and lime. Okay, let's move on to sweeteners. Because you're using a little bit of an acid, you need a sweetener to cut that acid, or you can use the acid to cut the sweetener. It doesn't really matter. You need both. I use equal parts of each. So for me, I use honey and brown sugar and maple syrup. Those are my favorite, but you can also use any type of sweetener that you think works for you and your family best. But the 3 that I use the most are honey, brown sugar, and maple syrup. So this is where you get to play with the combinations. Which acids do you want to use? Which sweeteners do you want to use? And remember, you only need one of each in each marinade recipe that you create. So you can play with all of the different combinations and see if there's one that you like more than the other. I've used distilled white vinegar, which is tasteless. Apple cider vinegar does have a little bit of a taste. My lemon and lime, I like the lightness and the citrus flavor that it adds to my chicken, but you have so many options. At one point I made a wonderful peach vinegar that I used on my fish, and it was amazing. So again, every time you change up the combination, it changes the depth of flavor and it feels like a completely different meal. So you see me here using a marinade that was gifted to me. I decided to try it. It was pretty good. I used maple syrup, and I think there I used some lime juice and red wine vinegar. So don't forget, you also have options of red wine vinegar or white wine vinegar. There are so many options for vinegars and sweeteners, so have fun with playing with the combinations and making each meal different. All right, you see me here about to add a little mustard for a little tang. I'm using my cilantro that I had chopped up earlier. I'm adding garlic to some of my meals. So you get to play with the combination of foods. But now let's move on to our herbs or aromatics and seasonings. This is your moment to use up a lot of the seasonings that you've had in your cabinet that you don't always get to. Please do not go out and buy seasonings. Plus, seasonings have really jumped up in price. You can make your own homemade seasonings. And if you want me to show you a video of how I make some of my homemade seasonings, I can. But remember, most of the things you can buy and dehydrate yourself. So you can make your own garlic powder, your own onion powder, your own chili powder. Some you will buy, but some you can also make at home to cut down on the cost. As long as you have an oven or a dehydrator, you should be fine. But let's talk about all of the options and combinations, some of which you'll see in this video and some not. So at the beginning of the video, you saw me scan over my little spice rack area that I have to the side. But some of the things that I use, seasonings that I use intermittently throughout building my marinades in the moment are cumin, curry powder, turmeric, paprika, thyme, rosemary, parsley, any kind of adobe powder that you may have, fiesta chili powder, ginger. There's so many things that you can use that you might already have. If you have seasoned salt, you can even use a bit of cinnamon, which I promise you tastes so good when you try it. So be open, but don't go out and buy stuff. Look in your cabinet, find some seasonings you haven't used in a while, and pull all those out and see if you can start putting them into your marinades to continue to build that depth of flavor, without having to go to the store and buy expensive marinades or expensive seasoning mixes. I also add salt and pepper to most of my combinations because the salt will bring out that amazing flavor that you're building in each bag. So as you can see, I have them all here. I will pop them out, throw them in a pan, and put them in the oven. So make sure you come back for part 2 when I do my fish. Thanks for watching.